Welcome to this episode of Pop Culture. Today we're doing something a little different. We'd like to call on Namibia and the chair of SADC to prioritize menstrual health and sanitation. To continue the conversation, we're joined by FEMME Project and Lady Skollie. We hope you enjoy.
What's The first time I knew about a period was at home. Like I knew that my mom got a period. I knew when I got a period. But when I actually learnt properly about a period was only in high school. And I'd had my period since the age of 12. So there was like a good, 5-year gap before I knew actually what a period is and how a period works and, why I'm getting it. And then only through doing FEMME's work did I realize, break away from the stigma of a period. But I learned, like the word learned came so late.
So the first time I don't know, obviously I think it was unconscious because I didn't know I was learning about periods, but Uma, I used to see her in the bathroom changing her pad or whatever. I was like, oh girl, what is this new thing? Like, because I have no idea what this is. And she, like, our family is very open. Like, it's always like, oh, this is happening, or this, not especially with sex, but like with the period, like Uma was always like, oh, I'm on my period, or this. I could see the blood and I'd be like, oh, okay, that's happening to you. And I'd be like, is that gonna happen to me? And she's like, yeah, it'll happen, but most of the time I also tell cooler or whatever, because it was obviously happening at a young age and then you see it. And then I got my period in primary school and I was like, oh wow, so this is what this is. But now I felt a little closer to Uma because I was like, oh, this thing's gonna happen to both of us.
I think it was in school. No, you know what? That's a lie. Actually, screw school. My mom, when we were younger, I mean, obviously my mom had been menstruating, still menstruates actually, but I would see her once a month or so sitting on the toilet with this massive thing on her pad or on her panty, and it wasn't like ever a shameful thing. I knew that it was something that happened to my mother. I just didn't exactly know what it was. But I think what I learned from those interactions was that when I passed the bathroom and I saw her sitting there changing her pad, she never did it in a shameful way. She never hid it away. So I think even when I went to school and they started talking about periods and I started to know the scientific and biological names and words and themes and whatever, and my friends would be so ashamed of talking about it, I was pretty chilled. I had my own internalized shame to deal with, but I think my mom was pretty lit when it came to just being chilled about her body. Yeah, so that was the first time through my mother.
Weirdly enough, I don't actually remember the first time, I think. When was it? It was strange because in primary school, like how old was I? So in grade 7 was what, 2003, I was 12 years old. And 12, 11, 10, in grade 5, there was this girl who got her period, and she was like 10, 11 years old. I literally was shook. I didn't see anything, but I was just like, what is going on? And then you fast forward to where I'm at now, and I'm just like, looking back on that stuff, I'm like, it was the weirdest thing because not knowing what's happening to your body, and then you go home knowing this information, almost like this secret information. There's nothing you can do about it because then you're too scared to ask your parents about, like, oh my goodness, like, mama, my period, like, what's going on, da, 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 da. And then I remember, I think I got my period when I went to the Makayas in December of 2003. And I literally seeing blood come out of that part of my body was the most, I don't know, gut-dropping feeling in the world, because I was just like, what is going on? And then it clicked. It was like, oh, that thing is happening. Went to my mom and I was like, oh, Ma, this is happening. She literally was like, cool, like, because obviously she knew what to do, and not that it was almost like she was waiting for this moment to happen, but like she kind of just scrambled, got her stuff sorted, told me what to do, put this on your panties, and everything popped off, and it was cool. Later that evening, I got period pains, and at the time I didn't know. I thought it was stomach cramps. I wanted it was the most painful thing. And even now in my adult life, like even getting my period, my pants go down my legs to my feet. It's a very crippling feeling. So what did I think? I felt like it was a whole trash experience. But it's only with age that I come to understand what was actually going on with my body.
The stigma around menstruation is, I mean, it goes back to biblical times. It goes back to a woman having to be away from her people when she's going through it, or to someone saying, are you moody because of that? It's just the negative connotation of it overall, through the ages and through the times. It's never been something that people think is quite a natural thing of life that's just supposed to be embraced. It's kind of perceived as an obstacle, which I can kind of agree with that, because it's not something that I want necessarily every month, but it is something that reminds you that you're alive and that you're healthy and that things are working. And so I think maybe just the negative way of thinking about it is a huge stigma.
I think there's stigma around menstruation. I really do feel like it comes from a patriarchal space where people are trying to like control women's bodies. I mean, a great example I have is when I was in high school. Whenever we used to do swimming, a lot of the black girls were like constantly on a period. And I remember the PE teacher being like, just plug it up. Like, we have tampons in the office, go get a tampon and plug it up, let's keep going. And the one girl was like, no, I can't, like my mom doesn't allow me to wear tampons. She says it's too like suggestive or whatever. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I don't have rules at home like that, because we don't think like that. But then when I was older, I was like, who has like planted the seed that a tampon is a suggestive thing? It's not. It's, you literally just, like how my teacher was saying, you just plug it up and you continue with your life. But because people want to control women's bodies, they don't want you to even think about a penis. Anything that is even a tampon that has nothing to do with nothing, no, it's a no. They forever trying to control your body, and I'm just like, this is crazy. So I do think that it comes from a control space, particularly patriarchy trying to control how women see themselves and behave with their own bodies.
There's definitely a stigma because of miseducation and not learning, you know, and just not discussing it. And that's what happens with sex as well, is that if you just avoid the conversation, doesn't mean that it's not happening, it doesn't mean that the conversation is not happening. In high schools, learners are asking each other, you know, and they're not getting the information necessarily from the correct source or from a factual source. They're getting it from friends or from older cousins or from family members. And there's this massive stigma around a period being dirty and being disgusting and gross and mosach and, you know, fail and stinky, and that's a miseducation, you know, like your period isn't dirty, and the reason why something isn't smelling good is not because of the period, it's because you're using a pad for the whole day, you're sitting 12 hours, 8 hours playing sports, it's soaking up sweat, it's soaking up discharge, it's sitting there all day, and you're trying to make it last long because you don't have another one. And that's what's smelling, but what's coming out is your vagina and your uterus literally cleansing a wall of tissue and blood, which if I had a cut, it wouldn't be as gross, but because it's coming from my vagina, it's gross. So then, is the vagina what's gross? Is the uterus what's gross? Is it that people don't understand what's happening, and that's why it's seen as, you know, dirty? And it's not just teenagers and children that think that a period is dirty. It's adults. I mean, I hear like aunties say it. I hear cousins not, you know, like, you must make food because we're bleeding, you know, and it's like, huh? But like, I'm not sitting with my hands in my vagina all day, you know, like, and now making food or something. I'm still hygienic, and looking after myself. But just because I'm bleeding, I'm now seen as, you know, like, dirty and unhygienic and unsanitary, and that's a myth, and we just carry it on generation after generation.
Yeah, men are the problem. That's the last and the only answer I actually have, because honestly, who said it is? Like, what is bad about the period? Because if we're gonna go back to like its functionality, it's a good thing that's happening. It's helping you to pile umzimba wakho be right, or that it functions healthily. So why is it bad? Is it bad? So the reason why it's bad is because, or the reason why there is stigma is definitely a cultural, a school, a man said, a man keeps saying, the opinion of the man matters, so therefore it is. And so yeah, gosh. And the conversations aren't being had because it's still, we don't talk about it loud, you know. Now some 17, oh my god, I'm on my period. Oh my god, do you have a tampon? You know. So we're not, if we aren't changing what was done to us or that we learned that we don't like, then who's gonna change it?
Religion, culture, patriarchy, the literature that is available out there on it, patriarchy, religion, culture. Did I mention those? No, I reiterate it because I feel that in a country specifically where they speak about how progressive we should be and how, you know, the constitution, all of these things are supposed to be so progressive, our people aren't. And that isn't always our fault. As I mentioned, religion is a big thing in this country, not just my country, Africa at large, the world at large. And menstruation was, you can say, criminalized. Not really criminalized, but it's kind of, there's a word that I'm looking for. It was made something to be ashamed of. You know, I can't sit on that couch if I'm menstruating and then someone else can't sit on it either. I can't cook while I'm menstruating. I can't, and that's still a thing that's alive here in many communities all over the world. So I think that's why there's so much shame and so much stigma and so much bullshit, you know. We're not living in those times anymore where I can't go for a walk just because I've got my period. Like, I'm not on my deathbed, I've got my period. And I do understand that there are other people who have things like endometriosis and PCOS and all of these other things, and that's a different dynamic, and that's a different topic completely. But when it comes to just menstruating, it's my uterus cleaning itself, and I'm not pregnant. Thank you very much.